In this video, we will describe the Order Details screen. When you first create a new quote using the New button, the Order Details screen is automatically shown. This provides information at the header level involving the current quote. Normally, there are only a few aspects that the user wants to verify initially. First, primary contact, as well as the bill to and ship to. Understand that the bill to and ship to are both being defaulted from the customer's profile. In this example, our account number up top, 254828, has a default setting already established for the billing address and the shipping address. If we wish to change that, we can certainly type over top of what values were initially set, or using the search button, we can locate a previously saved address both for the billing side and the shipping side. The only other piece of information required at this time, as you'll notice highlighted in yellow, is the order ID. Any columns or fields highlighted in yellow are mandatory values are required for those fields in your organization. Initially, when we first create the quote, once we validated the primary contact and the shipping and billing information, we can certainly save this, but notice that the information for order ID is a required field and we must set that before leaving the screen. Using the drop-down, we can select the required information necessary for this quote. Note that this drop-down of values is set on a per location basis. Within the admin module, there are options for setting what values your location can have in here. Once we've set that value, hitting the Save button returns us to our main screen. If we need to make additional changes to that, using the option under Quote Order, Edit Order, or F6, will return us to the Order Details screen. Taking a second look at this screen and noticing a couple of key fields, first, primary and secondary contact. Both fields are an option as far as information is concerned. When searching for a quote or an order at a later time, both of these fields can be used to locate the quote or order based on a contact name. The order type commonly has one of two options, sales and service. The other options, reserve stock, cust stock, loaner, and in-house, will depend on specialized orders. Order ID, as we described, is an option that you can set. If in this case it's a mandatory field, you will be required to set it. Otherwise, it can be left blank and has no impact on the flow of the quote. To the right, the date that we created the quote is indicated. And once the quote becomes an actual sales order, we will also capture the date of that. The order ID we selected a minute ago also has an additional description, which, if desired, we could add to with additional information if necessary. Down below, we track the account manager, inside rep, and who's entering this quote. The account manager is a default value once again from the customer profile. The inside rep and enter by are based on who initially created the quote. To the right are some additional fields related primarily to the customer's needs and requirements. First, expected. This is the date the customer expects this item or this order to be processed to them. In some cases, leaving this blank is fine, but if they're indicating that they expect to have it by the 27th, you can indicate that here. And by setting that information, you help the warehouse processing indicate when things are back ordered or require immediate attention. The ship on is an additional field that indicates when this item should be shipped to the customer. Normally when blank, any items received and processed will be shipped usually the same day to the customer. But if the scenario is such that your customer will be out of town this week and they may request shipping not to occur until, say, next Monday, setting that value will automatically hold up any shipments until the 31st for this line item. Below that, the PO number or the customer's PO number. In some cases, that may be a mandatory field as well. Reference 1 and reference 2 are additional fields that can be used either for the customer's reference. Sometimes a customer won't yet have a PO, but they may have a reference number that you can utilize. And again, both of those fields are searchable. And finally, the cost center. If your customer wants to indicate that they're purchasing product for their accounting department, their IT department, or any other area, setting that value can also capture additional information as it relates to this order. Setting the customer center, or cost center I should say, is also a valuable field if and when you want to do reports for your customer and break them out into what they've purchased over the past year based on their cost center. Again, setting these values has no impact on the flow of your quote, but it does provide valuable information if required for reporting concerns at a later time. The next level indicates additional fields first related to quote expiry. This is an option that may or may not be turned on in your location. If set, then we're indicating that all new quotes, for example in this case, will expire on October 9th. So any attempt after the 9th of October to process or print or email this quote will fail, as the expiration date currently is set to October 9th. As a system setting, you can indicate for your location if quote expiry should be 30 days, 10 days, 40 days, or any value you wish. In this case, I believe we're currently set at approximately 45 days. Also note, the quote expiry will change automatically when using instant rebates or bids. Anytime a bid or an instant rebate is used for any of the line items and the expiration date of those is earlier than October 9th, then the quote expiry will automatically drop to the shortest or soonest date as far as expiry is concerned. To the right of that, estimate close as a date, the probability status, and the probability percentage are ways of tracking any quotes that might be considered future that you want to look back and find the probability or when this quote might actually close. To the middle left are a number of accounting settings. As I've mentioned a number of times, many of these fields are defaulted based on the customer's profile. Again, terms. So this customer's profile, their default terms is net 30. If security allows you to change it, that is changeable. In some cases, you may not be able to change that if your security profile does not provide that option. PSD exempt, PSD number, recycling exemption number, all additional fields including GST and HST exemption are again initially set based on the customer profile that we initially selected. If the customer is purchasing this on a credit card, we can track that information. The province or state that the taxes are relevant to are indicated here. Notice that this will default based on the shipping address in the lower right-hand corner. So if we're shipping to the province of Ontario or say the state of New York, that change will update the tax rate automatically. If the person is purchasing typically in Canadian dollars, it'll indicate that here. If the desire is to purchase in some foreign currency, US for example, then we can change that here as well. Credit limit, again, a value we can't change, but it does indicate that this customer has a very minimal credit limit, as you can see, at a penny, thus indicating any attempt to turn a quote of more than a penny will require approval given the credit limit set currently at 1 cent. Finally, in this section, PO required, invoice complete, don't print $0 invoices in WebQuote are again examples of values that are initially set from the customer profile. If the customer has indicated that all of their orders must have a PO, then setting the PO required should be turned on. This allows the accounting department not to generate an invoice unless the PO has been set ahead of time. Invoice complete. Customers may wish to receive product over a period of time because it may not all arrive on the same date, but their desire to have one invoice would indicate setting this value to invoice complete. Again, on a multi-line order, when invoice complete is checked, each line when it's received into BOSS can and will be shipped immediately, but the complete invoice will not occur until the last item has shipped to the customer. Don't print $0 invoices is more commonly used on the service side, when often we have a warranty that has a $0 invoice to the customer, but any $0 invoice that you do not wish to print would be indicated with this setting. And finally, a web quote. If your organization is using the eBOSS system, the online tool for quotes and orders for your customers, then normally quotes that are created in the BOSS system do not appear in the eBOSS. By checking that off under Web Quote, you would then be able to surface this quote onto the eBOSS, thus allowing your customer to view it within the eBOSS environment. The middle section has additional information related to job number, job status, start and end dates. This was added in an effort to try and tie together more than one order. If your customer may have a project and you're purchasing a number of different items over a period of time and you want to link these different quotes together, then setting the job number to a common number across each of those quotes will allow you to link those together. And of course, they can be searched and located quite easily using the search by job number elsewhere in the system. To the right, if configuration is required, then we can set that. Notice that when set, it will drop the configuration location field, and there's local, other, and service department, and there is an option to customize it if you wish for additional places of where the config should occur. Urgent is self-explanatory. If it's an urgent order, indicating that here will help the warehouse identify it as an urgent order. Direct to customer. If the purchasing product is wished to be shipped directly to the customer, then setting that flag will do that. This is a key field because if it's not set, then normally when the warehouse will process your purchases, they will normally be shipped to your location and not to the customer. Again, this is a value that is also set by default at the customer profile, but can be overridden on a per quote basis. If leasing to a customer, then there is an option to indicate which account might be leasing this. Note again that if this value is blank or no leasing companies have been defined, you will have to access the customer profile to set up valid leasing companies. Please see the customer profile video for additional information on that. Finally, pick up and ship complete are additional fields. If the customer is going to pick up the order at your location, you can indicate that. The ship complete, much like we described the invoice complete, indicates that we don't want to ship individual items until all items have been received, and then and only then will all the lines be shipped to the customer. Pick hold, config hold, ship, and invoice hold are additional fields that are not commonly used. If there is a need to hold up the shipment for some reason, we can indicate that here. Same with invoice, config, or pick. Drawing our attention to the bottom, as we mentioned earlier, the default build to and ship to addresses were initially pulled from the customer profile. As mentioned, we can certainly change this information or modify this information if required. We have the option of copying left or right, and if we have a list of previous addresses for this customer, we can do a search and locate the addresses and add them in here as well. Additional fields or values, order notes. If there's a need, for example, to have a specific note on one of the common documents that is produced throughout the warehouse module, such as the packing slip or maybe the invoice, we could indicate that here, and typically those notes will then appear on when those documents are produced. Freight charge, once again, another example of a default value coming from the customer profile. In our case, we can see that the default is not set, so there is no freight charge, but commonly, if we wanted to set a freight charge, we do have 4 or 5 options available for the different ways of how freight can commonly be calculated. The most common example would be fixed freight, let's say $10. So we've now indicated that for this order, that a $10 freight charge will occur. As you can see, there's also freight being charged at cost plus dollar, cost plus percentage, or fixed line, which indicates a charge on a per line basis based on the item master of the individual line. The information above, courier, service, terms, account number, etc., are all additional information that can be tracked as far as freight is concerned. Again, this information does not affect the flow of the quote or order. Related documents. If we wanted to add a document, maybe a RFP, for example, that was given to us in relation to this quote, we can link it to this quote. When we do the link, you'll notice that when we add a document, we can locate and indicate it that it's linked to this order. And also note that when we do that, if it's not indicated to copy it to the server, it's likely that document will be on your local hard drive which might mean that other users won't have access to it. If you want to make that a shared document, certainly indicate under the copy file to central server, and thus the selected document will copy itself to the central server, which will then be available to other users. We also have the option of adding a new link. If, for example, maybe some product information, such as HP Laser, was a website that we could indicate that had product information by typing that in, somebody later on could view and access that directly using the related documents section. Finally, we've got two common note fields available in here. The instructions allow us to put comments related to this quote. Note that this information can and will show up on any quotes in many documents that will be sent to the customer. If it's an internal comment, something that only internal people or the warehouse should see, we also have an internal note. This information is visible throughout BOSS but does not print on any documentation. Once we've set and are happy with our values, hitting the Save button will return us to the main screen.